Hi everyone, welcome to part 3 of the Playoff Builder walkthrough. If you missed part 1 and 2, you're probably going to have no clue what's going on right now, so you might want to go back and watch part 1 and 2. But this is the exciting part. This is where we're going to simulate through the regular season and we're going to watch all the magic happen. So just as a recap, we've built out our tournament here. We've got a play-in game between the American League seeds 4 and 5, and then the first round and the second round, and then finally our championship. Just a reminder, it's a little bit of a quirky league here. We've got the American League with 3 divisions and 2 wild cards, so 5 playoff teams, and then the National League's a small league with just 1 division, 1 wild card, 2 playoff teams. So the National League is only going to have 1 playoff series, championship series, and then the World Series will be between the American League and National League winner. I just made it quirky just to show you that there's a lot of flexibility here with the playoff builder. But let's go back to our bracket. There's a reminder of what it looks like. And now I'm going to go and simulate the final games of the season. So just a quick look at the standings to make you aware. I've already, to speed this demo up a little bit, I've simulated through 5 games of the season. We've got 2 more games left. You can see we're probably going to be dealing with a lot of tiebreakers here, so we'll see how the tiebreaker logic works as well. So let's go to simulate game, and you can see I've got 2 more days left in my regular season. So I'm going to go ahead and sim day 6. And just a quick note here: you can alter your season at any point. It's not going to affect the automated playoff builder. The automated postseason stuff only triggers when the final game of your regular season is played. So in between that time, you could do whatever you want to your schedule. You can remove games, add games, whatever. It doesn't really matter. It's just that when you get to your final game, and here we are, we're on day 7, the final game. So when this day finishes simulating, all the automated magic is going to happen, right? So let's get to it. Let's get this day simulated, and we'll see what happens here. All right, we're getting to the final games, and hopefully the magic works. All right, we're almost there. We're almost there. There we go. Okay, so you can see some magic has already happened because a playoff series was built out on day 8, 9, and 10 of our schedule. This is that wild card series we expected, that play-in wild card series we expected to get built. So let's take a look at what happened here. If I go to the home page of my league, and you can see the transaction log now has some updates. So the transaction log is telling us that in the sample league, a tie between 2 teams, the Reign and the Gamblers, in the American League West was settled via the divisional record. Okay, so it looks like head-to-head did not work and it had to fall back to divisional record. So let's take a look at the Reign and the Gamblers if we go into the standings. And sure enough, both of those teams are 4 and 4, right? I'm going to take a look at the head-to-head matchup. So the Reign and the Gamblers did not play each other in our short little schedule, so they had no head-to-head matchup, so it fell back to a divisional record. Whoops, let me go take a look at the divisional record. So in the West, the Reign were 1 and 3. The Gamblers in the West had no games in the West. So this is a little bit of a weird example, right? Because the Reign actually had some games against Western Division opponents, they technically had a higher winning percentage, and therefore they won the divisional tiebreaker. Weird example because the schedule was so short, but it actually did work as expected, okay? The Reign won the tiebreaker and won the West Division. Okay, so let's go back to the transaction log again, and we see that a tie between the Gamblers and the Taxis in the American League wild card spot 1 was settled via the league conference record. Okay, so this got even deeper into our tiebreaker logic. So what happened here was the Reign won the division, right? Which meant the Gamblers became a wild card team. Now the Gamblers had to have a tiebreaker between the Taxis. So if we look here, it looks like the Taxis won that via the league conference record. So if we just check real quick, the Taxis and the Gamblers did not have any games against each other. So there was no head-to-head tiebreaker. Since they are not in the same division, it skipped over the divisional tiebreaker, so that makes sense, and it went to the league tiebreaker, and the Taxis were 3-1 in the American League. The Gamblers were 4-3 in the American League. So at 3-1, the Taxis had a better American League record than the Gamblers, and they therefore won the wild card tiebreaker. All that means is that the Gamblers and the Taxis are still the two wild card teams, but what that means is the Taxis got the higher seed in the wild card game and are therefore going to have the home field advantage. So if we now go to our schedule, we should see, and here it is, here's our first playoff series, the play-in round, and the Taxis indeed have the home field advantage in our 1-1-1 play-in round series here, right? So everything worked as expected. You'll notice on the schedule page, we have some new things here now. We have all of your playoff teams will be listed with their seeds, and your brackets will be down here so that your league can understand sort of what's happening in the playoff matchups. And you can see that the seeds are injected into the matchups here. So we've got the Taxis as the 4 seed, hosting the Gamblers as the 5 seed, and the Kings are the 2 seed and will be taking on the Reign, the 3 seed, in the next round. And then the Dragons are the 1 seed, and they are going to be waiting for the winner of that wild card matchup. So you can see how the whole thing breaks out. And then the National League will be the Bulldogs versus the Beer. And let's go take a look at the National League real quick. And yep, that all worked as expected. Bulldogs number 1, the Beer are number 2. They'll play each other in the National League Championship. Okay, so everything looks like it is working as expected. So that's great. Now we'll take a look at the transaction log one more time. And you'll notice that it says user and CPU sibs have been turned off. So that was one thing we wanted to do. Each team has been granted 2 days off. So that was another thing that we wanted to have happen after the end of the regular season. The season stats have been archived. Great. Player awards have been granted, and division titles have been granted, and the draft order has been set for next season. So all of our automated tasks that we wanted to happen have happened. And you can look at the history page and verify this, so you can see that we have an American League MVP, we have a Cy Young, we have our National League MVP and Cy Young, we have stats archived, we can look at our 2003 stats now, everything's been archived. So this is great. All of our postseason stuff worked. And by the way, you will get individual inbox messages. So you'll see I've got an inbox message that says the following end of regular season tasks have been completed. And so it just basically repeats what's been said in the transaction log. And it also tells me that my first round of playoffs have been built in the sample league. Please verify all looks correct. And it's also notifying me of the tiebreakers. So you're going to get all these notifications that all this automated stuff worked as you expected it to work. And sure enough, it did. So hallelujah. Okay, so now everything's been built. We didn't have to do a thing, and we can now start simulating playoff games. So at this point, you could, if you wanted to, you could turn your user sims back on, right? You could go to your change league settings, and you could go down to CPU user sims, and you could turn these back on if you wanted to automate through your postseason. I'm going to leave these off because I'm just going to manually simulate through everything. So we're just going to go back to my schedule. All right, so let's just start simulating our first round and see what happens. So we're going to simulate day number 8. Okay, and then let's go to our schedule. And the Gamblers won big in that game. Let's go back and simulate the next day. Okay, so it looks like that series is over because look, a whole bunch of other games have been added to the schedule now, right? So if we go to the schedule, we're going to see that the Gamblers won that series decisively 2-0. That advances the Gamblers to the next round against the #1 seeded Dragons in a 2-2-1 series. That's what we expected to have happen. There are the Reign and the Kings. The Kings, if you remember down here, are our #2 seed, so that all worked as expected. And it looks like our playoffs are getting built out exactly as we wanted them to, so that is great. A quick note here, you're going to see that certain things have happened. So automatic days off have been granted to teams. So the Taxis and the Gamblers, they got a day off during that wild card series, if you remember, and then the entire league was granted 2 days off after the end of the series happened. So in between series, we had our 2 days off granted, right? So so everything is going along swimmingly. Let's go ahead to our simulate page again, and we're going to start simulating the second round. All right, I'll simulate another day here. All right, so let's see how we're doing. We'll go to the schedule again, and you can see that we've got 2 series tied at 1-1, so we've got some tight series going on here. We'll just keep this going. And remember, as you're simulating through these games, your automatic days off are going to be happening. So you can see that the Kings, the Reign, the Dragons, and the Gamblers all were given days off because we reached that threshold that we set in between the series, right? And by the way, for those of you who are curious, this is leveraging the system behind the scenes is leveraging the add automatic days off system. So you can see here it's creating these days off for these playoff teams. If you watch that video, this is a new feature, but the system behind the scenes is actually using this feature to grant those days off throughout the playoffs, and you don't have to lift a finger. It's doing it all for you. All right, so let's see where we are here as after we do this game. We're getting close to the end of our 5-game series. Okay, now this is interesting. We only have 1 game left to simulate, so that means one of the series has ended, right? So let's go ahead to the schedule, and you'll see that the Dragons, the #1 seeded Dragons, won that series decisively 3-1, while the other series is deadlocked at 2-2, so it's a very tight series. You can see now this, commissioners, you remember this little delete remaining games link. You don't have to use that anymore if you're using the automated playoff system. It's doing it all for you, right? So, all right, we got 1 more game in the first round to finish, and then we're going to advance to our next round. So let's get to it and simulate that final game. All right, our next round has been built, right? So we go back to our schedule and we see that the Kings won the series. So now we've got the Dragons at the Kings and then the Kings at the Dragons in a 2-3 format. We've got the Bulldogs at the Beer in a 2-3 format for the National League. Now the National League series is kicking in here, right? And so everything's working great. The winner of this next round is going to meet in our championship. So let's keep on trucking along here. And really the last thing to show you here as we get through this semifinal round, and then the final round is that at the end of the final round, your team will automatically be granted their trophy and your user will automatically be given a ring on their profile. You no longer have to reach out to me directly and request a user ring if you're using the automated system. And let's see how our schedule is shaping up here. So we've got a 2-1 series lead in both series. So we'll keep going. It's granting days off here as we have told it to. And in this demo, I'm blowing. Okay, so it looks like we're done, and we've got our championship. So we go to the schedule, and we see that the Dragons won 3-1, the Bulldogs won 3-1. So what do you know? Our two number one seeds are meeting in the World Series. That never happens on Pen and Chase, right? Well, it just did. Number one versus number one. All right, so that's our finals, and it's a 7-game series, 2-3-2 format. That's how we set up the World Series. Perfect. Everything looks great. So, I'm simulating through this manually. Obviously, you could do this however you wanted. You can use user sims. You can use the CPU sims. You can do it yourself on your own timeline. I'm just blowing through this for the purposes of the demo, but this whole thing works basically however you want it to work. It can go as fast or as slow as you really want it to. And again, if you don't want to do this and you want to do it the old manual way, you still have that option. This is just showing you how you can do it in a much more automated fashion now. You don't have to build these series out. We got a 3-1 lead for the Bulldogs. It looks like they're on the verge of the championship here. Let's see if they win it. There we go. No more games on the schedule, so it's obviously over. We go over here. We got the Bulldogs winning the World Series 4-1. And the whole postseason has been simulated for us. If we go to the history page, there are the Bulldogs, the 2023 league champs. And that is it, my friends. You just watched an entire postseason automatically be constructed. And as you simulated this season, the postseason is continually constructed for you. And when it's done, it awards the championship. And now you can start your next season. And the next thing I would love to do for Pen and Chase is to have the next season tasks get automated too. So to help you sort of start your next season in a more automated way as well, that would be really cool. We're getting closer and closer to really a whole Pen and Chase season, including off season, being a turnkey experience. That would be really awesome. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed watching this. I hope you'll use it, and I hope it saves you a lot of time as a commissioner. Thanks.